Hi, very good morning. I'm Dr. Janak Patel, MD, General Physician. We'll be talking on one of the interesting topic that is respiratory failure, which you will see once in a while in your everyday practice. Basically, we know that there are two types of respiratory failure, but we'll be talking of other also. So, we always use the word acute respiratory failure and chronic respiratory failure. Acute respiratory failure, it is inability of the lung to meet the metabolic demand of the body. What is metabolic demand? Oxygen. So this can be from failure of tissue oxygenation and or failure of CO2 homeostasis. And it is because of lung, inability of the lung. Then we call that as a respiratory failure. And if it is rapid, then we call as an acute respiratory failure. Pulmonary system is no longer able to meet the metabolic demand. Basically, there are two common variety which we are always talking about is type 1 and type 2. Type 1 is hypoxemic respiratory failure and type 2 is hypercapnic respiratory failure. Hypoxemic is because of exchange of oxygen, where PO2 is less than 60 millimeter of mercury when person is breathing at the room air, while hypercapnic is because of inability to ventilate. So there is an accumulation of carbon dioxide, and that is going to give rise to increase in PCO2. That's why it is called hypercapnic respiratory failure, where PCO2 instead of less than 45, it becomes more than 50. Then we call that as a type 2 respiratory failure. So in general, we define a respiratory failure as it is a condition in which the lung cannot fulfill the primary function of maintaining adequate gas exchange, leading to PaO2 less than 60 and PCO2 more than 50. So that is a basic definition, and depending upon the onset, we call acute and chronic. Type 1 we have already described, hypoxemic. So there is a hypoxemia without hypercapnia, where PO2 is less than 60 at room level. Classical example, pneumonia, ARDS, etc. While hypercapnic means hypoxia with hypercapnia. It is because of either respiratory center damage, that is damage to the brainstem, or disease of respiratory bellow, or even in COPD. So if lung fails, that is exchange at the level of alveoli, so PaO2 is less, PCO2 is normal or decreased, it is hypoxic respiratory failure. But if the central nervous system or muscles does not ventilate, so you have got a hypoxia with hypercapnia, then it is called type 2 respiratory failure. So type 2 is also called as a pump failure or central. This is peripheral, or this is because of lung. So hypoxic respiratory failure is type 1, which is because of lung failure or oxygenation failure or respiratory insufficiency. We have already told you that it is failure of lung or heart to provide adequate oxygen to meet the requirement. The criteria is PaO2 has to be less than 60, PaO2 less than 40 on any FiO2, or SaO2 less than 90. So these are the criteria. Basic cause is right to left shunt or VQ mismatch. alveolar hypoventilation, diffusion defect, or inadequate FiO2, while hypercapnic is because of pump failure or ventilatory failure. So there is an accumulation of carbon dioxide. In acute, there is increase in PaCO2 more than 50 or acutely above the normal baseline in COPD with concurrent decrease in pulmonary hypertension less than 7.3. So pH reduces less than 7.3. So pump failure drive mainly because of muscles CO2 production increases right to left shunt and there is an increased dead space that will result into hypercapnic respiratory failure. You can divide into acute and chronic. Acute will usually occur within minutes to hours, while chronic will take several days or even more than week. Type 1 is also called as peripheral failure, lung failure or perfusion failure, while type 2 is called pump failure, ventilatory failure or ventilation failure or central. These are the three common words utilized for type 2. Type 3 is called perioperative. So following a surgery, following an anesthesia, usually there is collapse and that ends up with type 3 variety. And type 4 is associated with peripheral shock. So type 1 is hypoxic, type 2 is hypercapnic or ventilatory failure, type 3 is perioperative, where this is generally subset of type 1, but it is separately given because it is following anesthesia or following a surgery, while type 4 is secondary to cardiovascular inability. So peripheral failure, central failure, type 3 respiratory results from lung collapse or we call lung atelectasis, and it is called perioperative respiratory failure and it is usually after GA. So typically perioperative respiratory failure is called as type 3. Type 4 is hypoperfusion of respiratory muscle in a patient in a shock stage. Normally respiratory muscle consumes less than 5% of total cardiac output and oxygen delivery. So in a shock, respiratory distress due to pulmonary edema as well as there is a lactic acidosis and anemia. So type 4 is secondary due to shock. So goal of ventilation is to stabilize the gas exchange and upload the respiratory muscle, lowering the oxygen consumption. Very commonly this is classical seen in cardiogenic, hypovolemic or septic shock. This is the etiology which you can see here. When you get respiratory failure due to damage to medulla, either because of infection or because of bleeding, trauma, syringomyelia or secondary due to drugs, this will be central failure or we will call that as a pump failure. If there is any disease which produces damage to spinal cord, either transection, poliomyelitis, acute transverse myelitis, etc., or because of peripheral nerves, we call Guillain-Barré, classical example, or say even we can call as botulism. So in this condition you get central failure, and if there is any disease like myasthenia gravis, myotonic dystrophy or paralysis of diaphragm, etc., it will give rise to what we call as a type 2 failure. If there is a thoracic cage damage, kyphoscoliosis, obesity, flail chest, etc., or there is an airway obstruction, this condition will also result into what we call as type 2 variety of failure. So that will give rise to more of type 2 failure. Type 1 failure will be because of lung and secondary due to heart. You can divide into acute and chronic. So the common causes of acute respiratory failure, which is type 1, pneumonia comes topmost on the list. Cardiogenic or non-cardiogenic pulmonary edema like ARDS, non-cardiogenic is ARDS, or you come across cardiogenic pulmonary edema, massive pulmonary embolism, pulmonary hypertension, etc. So these are all lung pathology. While type 2 respiratory failure very commonly because of central or neurological, we already mentioned, damage to brainstem either because of infection, trauma, vascular, or because of damage to spinal cord or damage to peripheral nerves supplying diaphragm and intercostal muscles. Classical example, Guillain-Barré, spinal cord injury, peripheral injury, or neuromuscular junction like what we call as a botulism, myasthenia gravis, myotonic disorders, those conditions. As far as lung is concerned, bronchial asthma, COPD, or upper airway obstruction, that can also. Rarely because of the, we call thoracic cage abnormality, like severe kyphoscoliosis, can end up with type 2 respiratory failure. So acute type 1, we already mentioned, cardiogenic, non-cardiogenic pulmonary edema and pneumonia, these three comes topmost on the list. Then comes thromboembolic phenomena. We have already mentioned this, cardiogenic, pneumonia, ARDS comes topmost on the list. Extrapulmonary causes of ARDS, atelectasis, aspiration, pneumonia, etc. Some of these can be life-threatening condition like acute severe asthma, COPD exacerbation, severe pneumonia, acute respiratory distress syndrome, massive pulmonary embolism. These are life-threatening conditions. Of this, some of these can produce even type 2. Chronic type 1, very frequently you will come across in fibrosing alveolitis, interstitial pulmonary fibrosis, chronic pulmonary edema, chronic thromboembolism leading to pulmonary hypertension. We'll skip this. This will be giving rise to different varieties, increase in alveolar gradient, normal alveolar gradient, you can divide into that. In type 2 acute variety, upper airway obstruction, severe bronchial asthma, acute CNS disorders, myasthenia gravis, Guillain-Barré, acute exacerbation of COPD, pneumothorax, etc. This condition will produce hypercapnic respiratory failure. While in a chronic type 2, classical example COPD, chronic bronchitis, severe kyphoscoliosis, Pickwickian syndrome, chronic neuromuscular disorders like myasthenia gravis, and progressive respiratory disease. These are all divided according to where there is a damage. This is central nervous system damage, this is spinal cord damage, this is motor nerves, this is neuromuscular junction, this is muscle involvement. All this condition will give rise to central variety, or we call type 2 failure. At your leisure time you can go through. And if there is anything which produces damage to the alveoli, that will also can end up with type 2 failure, that is bronchial asthma, COPD, pulmonary edema, and excessive workload finally ends up with decreased effort like chest wall disorders, scoliosis, obesity, hypoventilation syndromes, sepsis, metabolic acidosis, tense ascites, etc., upper airway obstruction. This will all lead to what we call as type 2 failure. So this is, you can divide into generator, so that is central nervous system, pump, that is chest wall and neuromuscular, and this is effector organs. Again, this is for type 2 failure. At your leisure time, if you are interested, this is for type 3 during anesthesia, and the common mechanism is atelectasis, second common is pneumonia, and third is aspiration. And then it can end up with ARDS, and when it ends up with ARDS, it will give rise to type 1 variety, more of type 1. Even congestive heart failure can be because of volume overload. This will be the etiology for type 3. And in type 4, we have already mentioned cardiogenic, hypovolumic, and septic shock. Hypoxic variety, hypercapnic variety, may be acute, may be chronic. Third, perioperative and shock stage. What is basically happening in type 2? In type 2, because of damage to the brainstem or spinal cord or peripheral nerves or intercostal muscle, diaphragm, etc., there is a decreased ventilation, and because of decreased ventilation, there is an accumulation of carbon dioxide. And secondary to accumulation of carbon dioxide, and now the respiratory center fails to increase the respiratory rate, so there is bradypnea, and there is accumulation of carbon dioxide leading to hypercapnic respiratory failure. While in case of type 1, at the level of alveoli, there is poor exchange of oxygen leading to hypoxia. So this is the basic mechanism in these two varieties. Whether it is acute or chronic, if it is because of central nervous system, peripheral nerves, respiratory muscle, chest wall, or upper airway, this will lead to what we call as a type 2 variety. And if there is anything which is happening at the alveolar level, or because of pulmonary vasculature, cardiovascular system, or blood, it will lead to type 1. It will lead to hypoxic variety. We already explained this: spinal cord, nerves, muscles, upper airway obstruction, or thoracic cage. All this will lead to decreased pumping or decreased expansion of the lung. And because of decreased expansion of the lung, it will give rise to pump failure, or we call central failure, and accumulation of carbon dioxide. And if there is anything which happens at the level of alveoli, it will give rise to what we call as ventilatory failure or perfusion failure or peripheral failure. So primary oxygenation failure, we already told you that because of decreased oxygen, anaerobic metabolism, accumulation of lactic acid, metabolic acidosis. And because of severe hypoxia, now there will be refractory to oxygen. Treatment will be increase in cardiac output, increase hemoglobin. You will require vasodilator drugs. You might require diuretics. While in case of a primary ventilatory failure, which can be because of respiratory muscle fatigue or CNS damage or respiratory muscle weakness, spinal cord or peripheral nerve damage or chest wall defects, you require what we call as a ventilatory support. Here you will definitely require a ventilatory support, and this will give rise to accumulation of carbon dioxide, and that will end up with respiratory acidosis. Well, this will end up with metabolic acidosis. And this is the difference what will happen in an arterial blood venous blood, and supplementary oxygen. Can it increase the PaO2? It will increase in hypoventilation. Yes. So that will be there in a person who is having hypoventilation, that is type 2 failure. Respiratory mechanism in COPD. In COPD exacerbation, there is an airway obstruction, increase in resistance, expiratory flow limitations that will end up with increased and expiratory pressure, dynamic hyperinflation, increased work of breathing, respiratory muscle will get fatigued, and then you will have accumulation of carbon dioxide. So there is increased ventilatory drive. So there is a hypoxia, hypercapnia, and secondary to hypercapnia, you will have a respiratory acidosis. And this will also worsen the expiratory flow limits, hyperinflation. And secondary to hyperinflation, mechanical disadvantage, gas exchange will reduce, neuromechanical uncoupling, and cardiovascular effects will be pulmonary hypertension, decrease right ventricular preload, and increase left ventricular afterload. There will be also tachypnea secondary to because of hypoxia and anxiety. Person is hypoxic, there's increased work, so he gets fatigued faster. So slowly the respiratory center does not get stimulated by hypoxia and because of acidosis. And that will give rise to two varieties, hypoxic and hypercapnic respiratory failure, which can be acute or chronic. So as far as the clinical picture is concerned, we divide into two big groups. Third is perioperative and fourth is secondary due to shock stage. So we have got presentation of respiratory failure, hypoxic, hypercapnic plus manifestation of precipitating factors. Usually there will be two varieties, acute or chronic. We know that acute will develop within minutes and hours, while chronic will take several days to weeks. In hypercapnic, PCO2 will be more than 50, and in hypoxic, PaO2 will be less than 60. So in hypoxic variety, the person will come very frequently with dyspnea, cyanosis, confusion, somnolence, may get even hysterexis, fits, tachycardia, cardiac arrhythmias, tachypnea, accessory muscle will be working, nasal flaring, intercostal muscle recession. In a chronic variety, you can come across with polycythemia, pulmonary hypertension, cor pulmonale, and right side heart failure. This will be all because of hypoxia. Secondary to hypercapnia, person will have an increased blood flow, increased CSF pressure, headache, hysterexis, papilledema, warm extremities, collapsing pulse. There will be respiratory acidosis plus metabolic acidosis. Metabolic acidosis will be because of hypoxia and respiratory acidosis will be because of hypercapnia. In metabolic, there will be accumulation of lactic acid, and in case of respiratory acidosis, there will be accumulation of CO2. As far as CNS effect is concerned, impaired motor function, impaired judgment, cognitive function will be deteriorating, and there will be depression of the brainstem function. In cardiovascular system, tachycardia, bradycardia, ventricular ectopic rhythms. Myocardium will be slowly depressed and person may go into a shock stage. There will be also effect on kidney, liver and pancreas. Slowly there will be organ failure because of hypoxia. In hypercarbia, CNS will show you initially anxiety, irritability, later on person will have a confusion, stupor, coma and person can die. As far as cardiovascular system is concerned, tachycardia, hypertension. In late stages, hypotension and ventricular irritability producing ventricular arrhythmias. So common symptoms, dyspnea, impaired mental function, headache. As far as signs are concerned, tachycardia, papilledema, cyanosis, tremors, or we call flaps. Lung examination will show you respiratory findings. Because of sympathetic stimulation, increase in heart rate, we call tachycardia, elevation of blood pressure, hypertension, sweating, common findings. You will get cyanosis, mainly central cyanosis. Respiratory distress signs, dyspnea, nasal flaring, tachypnea, headache, restlessness, confusion, tachycardia, cyanosis, arrhythmias, tachycardia, etc. Decreased level of consciousness, alteration in respiration, breath sounds, accessory muscle of respiration will be active. Usually there will be in acute onset or gradual onset. In acute it will be in minutes and hours, while in gradual onset it will be days and weeks. If there is a sudden decrease in PaO2 or rapid increase in PCO2, it is usually very common in acute and it is a serious condition. Cyanosis indicates hypoxia. It will be bluish discoloration of skin and mucous membrane. Dyspnea is secondary due to hypercapnia and hypoxia. There may be paradoxical breathing because of excess of hypercapnia, carbon dioxide, confusion, somnolence, coma, and even person can get convulsions. Polycythemia is very frequently because of chronic hypoxia. Polycythemia will be very commonly seen in a chronic condition rather than acute condition. Pulmonary hypertension, cor pulmonale, right ventricular failure, all this will be seen more commonly in a chronic condition rather than acute. Tachycardia, hypertension or person going into hypotension will be very frequently seen in an acute. So in an acute you can get a neuropsychiatric symptoms, circulatory, cardiovascular symptoms and signs. In GI tract, liver function will be impaired, SGOT will be elevated, you will have a mucosal erosion, stress ulcer, GI bleeding. In kidney, you can have a blood urea elevation, proteinuria, hematuria, cast, we call as acute tubular necrosis. You can see what we call as a respiratory distress signs. There is one sign called as a tripod position. Person can have dyspnea, pursed lip, retraction of intercostal spaces. Secondary to hypoxia, metabolic acidosis, decrease in cardiac output, impaired renal function. We already mentioned all this previously. In case of asthma, you can have an increase in hypersensitivity, more common in males. Onset is before the age of 12. There is an intercostal retraction. Secondary to hypoxia, tachycardia, increased restlessness, tachypnea, cough, mucus. shortness of breath, expiratory wheeze, increase in carbon dioxide retention, prolonged expiration, and person can have life-threatening status asthmaticus. This is in chronic bronchitis. They are usually described as a blue bloaters. They are cyanotic, increased sputum production, hypoxia, hypercapnia, secondary to hypercapnia, acidosis. Very frequently they go into cor pulmonale. They have got edema, increase in respiratory rate, tachypnea, exertional dyspnea. Very frequently it is secondary due to smoking. There will be clubbing, cardiomegaly, accessory muscle of respiration working, cor pulmonale will be a very common finding in these groups. While in emphysema it is a pink puffer, increased CO2 retention, no cyanosis, pulse slipping, dyspnea, ineffective cough, hyperresonance on chest percussion, orthopnea, barrel-shaped chest, prolonged expiratory time, anxious, accessory muscle of respiration working, and it can end up with cor pulmonale. This is COPD. You have to differentiate between ARDS and cardiogenic edema. We have already discussed previously in ARDS chapter. So you can go through even in a left ventricular failure also, that is cardiogenic edema. We have discussed this particular part. So whenever a person comes with a respiratory distress, this is a simple slide you can go through. First, always try to find out whether the respiratory airway is patent or not. Then hypoxia. If person is hypoxic, what is the PCO2? If there is no hypoxia, rule out other conditions like this, what we call is a shock stage, acidosis, pulmonary embolism, anxiety, partial obstruction, pulmonary edema, bronchospasm, etc. You have to answer this. If it is yes, look for PCO2. If PCO2 is high, then increase in this, look for fatigue, hypoxia, acute or chronic respiratory failure. And if PCO2 is low, then hypoxic respiratory failure like pneumonia, ARDS, aspiration pneumonia, pulmonary edema, pneumothorax, those groups. And patient breathing hard, it is very commonly because of asthma, COPD or pulmonary embolism. And primary hypoventilation, if there is no breathing effort, then look for CNS, neuromuscular junction, toxins, peripheral nerves like Guillain-Barré, etc. So main investigation will be history and clinical examination of respiratory system, cardiovascular and CNS. You will go for ABG to find out the pH, PaO2 and PCO2, bicarbonates, etc. Chest X-ray to find out the lung and bony cage. CBC, sputum, blood culture, electrolytes, ECG may be showing you cardiac arrhythmias, particularly in hypoxic variety. Urine analysis to find out the damage to kidney secondary due to hypoxia. VQ lung scan is very rarely required. It is mainly for what we call as gas exchange problems, particularly in case of ARDS, in case of pulmonary embolism. Right heart catheter will be required to find out the severity of damage in a respiratory failure. So anemia, polycythemia will be seen in person with chronic hypoxia. Blood urea creatinine will be elevated in hypoxic damage. Liver function test will be also abnormal, SGPCA PT will be elevated in hypoxic damage. Electrolyte imbalance can be seen very frequently along with acidosis. Particularly in a metabolic acidosis, you will have a hyperkalemia. In respiratory acidosis, you will have a more of PCO2 elevated. CPK may be elevated, troponin will be elevated. TSH level should be also done. Chest X-ray, echocardiography and PFT is very important. PFT will help you to rule out the basic respiratory disorders, obstructive or non-obstructive groups. Echocardiography will tell you regarding the cardiovascular conditions and chest X-ray will tell you regarding the lung pathophysiology. ECG is not of much help, but still, in a case of a respiratory failure, you may come across cardiac arrhythmia, which can be dangerous and it is very common in hypoxic damage with metabolic acidosis. So these are all the different investigation. X-ray chest is a must. And if required, you can go for a CT. As far as management is concerned, correction of hypoxia by giving oxygen, correction of hypercarbia and hypercapnia, where you can use ventilation, which can be non-invasive ventilation, respiratory dialysis can be tried, and always treat the basic etiology. So etiology management comes first. Along with that, keep airway patent. Oxygen therapy is absolutely necessary. Sometimes you might require respiratory stimulant and mechanical ventilation to correct carbon dioxide retention. General supportive care in the form of a critical care, infection control, electrolyte and acid-base imbalance management, and management of basic etiology like cor pulmonale, pulmonary encephalopathy, multi-organ dysfunction syndromes, nutritional supports, etc. So the aim is divided into treatment of hypoxia, treatment of hypercapnia, unload the respiratory muscle by giving ventilatory support, managing autopep, and managing atelectasis. That is the most common cause in type 3. And during ventilation, you have to protect the lung and do lung recruitment. So maintenance of adequate oxygen delivery, mechanical ventilation, and treatment of the basic cause. So treat respiratory infections, avoid alcohol, avoid smoking, treatment of heart failure. If person is having pulmonary embolism, treatment of pulmonary embolism. This is in short inadequate amount of oxygen available to cellular metabolism. This is assessment and this is nursing intervention. In nursing intervention, oxygen, expectorant, ambulation, maintain good pulmonary hygiene, fluid, suction, cough, deep breath positions, take care of airway, vital signs, arrhythmias, evaluate the routine diagnosis measurement, stay calm, notify the doctor, chest movement, treatment of chest pain, underlying conditions, position, stay with clients, etc. These are all the things which you do and this is how you assess whether it is acute or chronic, whether it is hypoxic or hypercapnic, and what are the complications. You go for all differential diagnosis. You will go for ABG, hemoglobin, clinical examination, history, pulse oximetry, etc. And this is initial management airway patency should be maintained, oxygen, pulse oximetry, ECG monitoring, basic basic life support. Always rule out upper airway obstruction, lower airway obstruction, or it is a parenchymal disease, or it is because of central mechanism. Try to rule out that. So oxygen therapy indications, these are all the different indications. This is in chronic variety, long-term oxygen therapy. Then this is initial clinical assessment, assisted ventilation plan, and recovery. And these are the different types of ventilation, indication, contraindication, and what you do in monitoring, particularly non-invasive ventilation. This is non-invasive ventilation which was published in 2005, algorithm for non-invasive ventilation in acute exacerbation of COPD. At your leisure time, you can go through. And lastly, lung replacement, temporary by Novalung or ECMO. There are semi-permanent and there are permanent, we call transplants or stem cell therapy or biolung. This is not giving good results. Transplants and biolungs are utilized. This is Novalung. This is biolung. So this is indirectly like hemodialysis. These are indirectly like hemodialysis, performing the function of respiratory system. This is ECMO, most commonly utilized nowadays. As far as complication is concerned, pulmonary complication, pulmonary embolism, barotrauma, secondary during ventilation, pulmonary fibrosis following ARDS, nosocomial pneumonia, in cardiovascular, hypotension, shock, cardiac arrhythmia, MI, pericarditis, in GI tract, stress ulcer, ileus, diarrhea, GI hemorrhage, in infection, nosocomial infection, pneumonia, UTI, catheter-related sepsis, aspiration pneumonias, in kidney, acute renal failure because of hypoperfusion, nephrotoxic drugs, in nutritional disorders like malnutrition, diarrhea, hypoglycemia, electrolyte imbalance, etc. These are all multiple complications which can happen during treatment and secondary due to the disease itself. So cardiac arrhythmias, pulmonary hypertension, cor pulmonale, deep vein thrombosis, pulmonary embolism, polycythemia, complication because of oxygen therapy and mechanical ventilations. These are complications secondary to mechanical ventilation, barotrauma, nosocomial pneumonia, oxygen toxicity, tracheal stenosis, etc. So I end my lecture here. I hope this will be helpful to you. Once in a while, the person who is working in ICU can be benefited.